Auburn is not a place, it is a people. The loveliest village on the plains is more than a college sports venue, more than a university filled with historic buildings, more than a quaint little southern town. Its worth lies within its people, those that call Auburn home, whether that be for a single day at a time or for a lifetime. Much like our legendary Toomer's oak trees, our stories are the product of a firm foundation laid in the beginning of our Auburn story. These are the stories of the Auburn family. These are their roots.
War Eagle Auburn family, and welcome back to Auburn Roots, our journey of exploring and sharing the stories of your Auburn family members. We've been through 20 episodes at this point. I almost said 19, but it's been 20 episodes. We are now fully walking our way into the rest of the 20s. And for episode 21, we've got another special member of the Auburn family that I've reached out to and asked, and they have graciously accepted to come on here and tell their Auburn stories. And it's been quite a bit of a time for us to be able to get this scheduled. Holidays came up, big announcements got in the way, but I'm glad to finally have with me Scott Scroggins. You've probably seen him on Twitter from time to time, talking about stats and many other things, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that, Scott, but I just want to thank you for being here and being willing to tell your Auburn story.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it, buddy. And look, if there's anybody that's going to upstage you and your Auburn roots, it's got to be the new head football coach, right?
Yeah, we were scheduling to do this, and then they decided to name a head football coach, so we had to postpone it. But hey, that's worth postponing over for a few days.
It is, absolutely. And obviously the holidays are as well. And it was the funniest thing is we finally got a day set where you and I could do this. And then literally I'm getting ready to come home, prepare for our discussion. And then the news drops and I'm just like, wow, are you kidding me? There's no way where either of us are going to want to do this. And thankfully you were the smarter one and spoke up first and said, hey, why don't we just wait a little bit? So but we're here finally. It's just an interesting thing sometimes how these things come together. And how sometimes some things have to take a little bit of precedence. It does not, however, change how important your story is, your Auburn story, and how much we want to hear about it. So, Scott, the way I like to set these things up at the beginning is for us to talk first a little bit about you outside of Auburn. And I know that may be hard to separate yourself from that because I know you're a huge Auburn family member. But could you tell us a little bit about who you are, maybe where you're from, any other background information that people might need to know about you to get to know Scott?
Well, I grew up in Selma, Alabama. The only two places I've ever lived were Selma and Auburn, and lived here my whole life. Graduated from high school in 2003. Went to a community college here for 2 years before transferring to Auburn, and graduated from Auburn. Got an undergrad degree in accounting and radio, television, and film, and then got my master's in communication, did an internship in media relations and athletic department for my undergrad, and never left. That was, anybody that knows me knows how much I love Auburn, and so that just, it worked out. It's worked out great for me, and I really can't imagine being anywhere else. I mean, it's why I was asked to do this. I mean, it's something I love, I'm passionate about, and, I've always loved sports. As we were talking about before we got started, I was born with spina bifida, and so I'm in a wheelchair, so I obviously knew from an early age that playing competitive sports at that level or, even at the high school level probably wasn't going to be a path for me, so I found another path to get in sports. And I actually, when I was in high school and going to the community college here, I worked part-time at a radio station and was a co-host on a call-in daily sports show, and had some responsibilities with high school football on Friday nights on our coverage for that as well, and just found ways to surround myself with sports, because that's definitely been a passion of mine for really as long as I can remember.
You really seem like a jack of all trades. You've got media relations. You've been on radio broadcast yourself for high school football. You've called into several shows. You really seem to have found something that really sparks your interest. And it's interesting, as you said, you don't have the ability to technically play the sports that you're covering, but you found a way to be involved, not just be a spectator, but to be involved with them on a much deeper level. I mean, it's one thing for Kyle to go to a football game and watch it. And as I said, I keep alluding to these things. You're known for being a stats guy, but you found a much deeper appreciation for some of those things, especially with being involved with media.
I had a call-in radio show. I was actually, the show had started and run for a little while. I don't remember how long, but they needed somebody to join as a co-host, and they asked me, and I said, why not? And so that was an opportunity that came up, and I took it. Enjoyed doing it.
Probably gotten some interesting call-ins from time to time on those radio shows.
Oh, yeah.
No Paul Feinbaum.
No. Some of them that you probably would like to cut off at the end of the day. I mean, that's your audience, and they're the ones that are, sparking the interest in your show, and at least it lets you know that people are listening. And that's obviously what you're going for.
I think that's a great mindset to have about that. I think a lot of people maybe get annoyed by the more exuberant of guests and things like that you might have in a media situation. But to me, that's what kind of makes it interesting and throws you for a curveball and kind of keeps you on your toes, so to speak. So I quite enjoy when you get kind of some of the more colorful characters, we'll call them, that call into radio shows. And I don't frequent the Paul Feinbaum show much these days, and not even much back when I was growing up. But I do remember some of the characters, and we all kind of sat up in our seats when we heard those. So it's nice to see that you've had some background in that area. Something else I wanted to ask you, and part of my setup for asking about where you're from and things like that, you mentioned Selma. We haven't actually had someone yet from the Selma area that's grown up there and is very familiar with that area. Describe to me the Auburn, Alabama, or other SEC school. What's the breakdown there in Selma in terms of allegiances? Is it 50-50 one way, or is it like...
No, it's definitely not 50-50.
Okay. What do we got working with there?
I mean, I wouldn't even really have a way of giving you an accurate estimate, but it's definitely pro-Alabama.
Okay.
I mean, I would think that would be pretty customary anywhere you go in the state of Alabama outside of Lee County.
Yeah, I think that's a common theme. I think there's some areas that have a higher propensity to at least be more 50-50 for Auburn. And then I'm not shocked when you say that Selma leans that way, because, I mean, I know it's back roads, I think, if I've got my roads right, but Selma to Tuscaloosa is what, maybe an hour and a half, something like that?
Yeah, it's closer than Selma to Auburn.
So the obvious tie there, just because of distance wise, is not that much of a shock. So tell me, in a town where you grow up as an Auburn fan with all those Bammers, what is that like?
It's okay when we win. Yes, I've been known to be obnoxious at times, but I'm not really one that's going to go up to an Alabama fan and start rubbing it in your face if you don't come to me first.
Right.
But it's fun to go back and forth. I mean, it is a rivalry as long as you keep it fun. But it is nice to know when we win that you don't even have to say anything. Them just seeing you, that's a lot of times that's all it takes.
Absolutely. And I think you put it into perspective very much. So what this rivalry should be, it should never get personal. I mean, we can take jabs all we want at each other as long as it doesn't get personal and just too out of hand. And sometimes, like you said, you don't even need to say anything. I mean, one of my favorite memories that I have is walking into a Tuscaloosa eating establishment and just having one single, not even a bold Auburn shirt on, and these older gentlemen, just after we had just beaten them, just giving me this death stare. And I'm like, yeah, you know what's up this year, 365 days of this baby. So I would imagine, even though you had to go through a lot in Selma, being very pro-Alabama, the moments where you did get to gloat and do it maybe even silently were probably very special for you. And that I'm sure you prettied up Selma a little bit with that orange and blue that you were wearing.
Oh, I remember one of the teachers at my high school in 2001 when they beat us, playing the fight song and shaking her shaker, and I just had to grit my teeth and take it. I mean, they had beaten us. They not only beat us, they blew us out that year. But if you'll recall, that was the last year before Auburn won 6 in a row. And the next year, the Friday before the game, she was doing the same thing. If you recall, that was when when the game was in Tuscaloosa, and Trey Smith was the only healthy running back, and fullback was hurt, and it looked like Alabama was going to get an easy win. Well, that didn't happen. So she had fun on Friday. We had fun on Monday. So, and the 5 years after that as well.
Yeah, those were some good times there, and we'd like to see those return. And just for a little context of when we're recording this, we've already mentioned it before that this is right after, or a couple weeks after, the Brian Harsin hiring as the new head football coach. So I think, optimism is higher these days, and so maybe that seems like a higher likelihood that happened. But I love your take on the rivalry, and I always live by the mantra: if you can't take it, don't dish it out. So I dish it out because I can take it. It seems like we're very, very similar on that front. So we talked a little bit about where you've grown up, Selma, and the dynamic there, and your passion for sports and media, but a little bit more about your sports passion. Obviously not being able to necessarily participate in the traditional sense. What drew you to sports, even though you weren't able to physically maybe do that?
I don't know. Really, I've just had a love of sports as really as long as I can remember. I don't know that there was one thing that drew me to it, but I grew up in an Auburn family. Both my parents went to Auburn, and I've grown up going to football, basketball, and baseball games my whole life at Auburn. And I don't know. I've always loved sports and tried to surround myself, and as much as I could with sports. But like I said, I really don't know that there was one thing that drew me to it.
Well, sometimes we're not able to actually pinpoint why we're drawn to a particular thing, but we just know how it makes us feel and the joy it brings us. So even if you can't define that, the fact that you found something to really latch onto, and I think it makes it a lot easier to latch on to something big like sports when you've got something even finer to kind of hone in on, and that is surrounding Auburn and your love of it. And you mentioned that you grew up in an Auburn family. Is there any dynamic within your family where you've got some Alabama fans, or is it mainly Auburn?
Oh, we definitely have Alabama fans. I mean, again, I think probably any family, you might have to go to your extended family, but probably any family in Alabama, you're going to have that. So, yeah, definitely we have some Alabama fans.
So how are relations right now between the Auburn and the Alabama fans in the family?
It's fun. It's fun. Definitely have some relatives that like to wrap Christmas gifts in newspapers with the articles of after the Iron Bowl when they win. But hey, that's fun.
I have not heard of
like
people
you said,
doing that.
As long as you can take it, you can dish it. But
well, I got to tell you, that's pretty creative on their part, and I actually may use that in the very near future when Auburn starts dominating Alabama again, because that props to them. That's very, very smart there. So, and it's cheap too. You can just get the newspapers, like you said. It probably costs a little bit less than gift wrapping paper these days. So I love that creativity and the rivalry and y'all's family dynamic. It seems like y'all keep it very, very civil while having a little bit of fun within it as well. You said you were raised in an Auburn family. Was there any other school or fandom that ever stood a chance of overtaking Auburn as your top fandom?
Not unless it was whoever was playing Alabama. I mean, seriously, that's when people say, who are your favorite teams? It's Auburn and whoever's playing Alabama. But no, to answer your question, no. I mean, when I was in high school and started applying to schools, it really wasn't applying to schools. It was applying to a school. I mean, I knew where I was going, and I took the ACT and got the score I needed, and that's all I needed to know. I was going to Auburn because I honestly could not see myself being happy anywhere else.
So I always think about this, and I haven't asked anybody this yet. There's been similar stories, and I share one with you that I was applying to a school, like you said. What would it have taken for you to go to an Alabama? Like, what would they had to have offered you for you to have gone there as an Auburn fan?
Whew. I always get asked that question, but not as far as a student, but as getting a job at Alabama.
Oh, even worse.
And I've always said, well, I'd get fired the first day, so it wouldn't really matter. But to go to a student, well, first of all, I would have had to have not had the grades or whatever to get into Auburn. I mean, that would have been first thing. And it would have had to have been a free ride, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, and I don't even know then. I don't know what I would have done.
Money talks sometimes, but I don't know that it talks that well. Not when you're trying to speak Bammer.
No.
Well, I was just interested to see what it would take to get you there. And yeah, I think most people would agree with you that, there are probably some situations where it makes sense. And I would have been very interested to see you, Scott, in a situation where you get a job within the athletic department there because you just air out all their dirty laundry, like on day one. Like you said, that's the reason that you get fired. I can just imagine that right now.
Yeah. I'll claim that.
So let's talk about going to Auburn. Remind me again and the listeners when you arrived, what you're there for, what your goals are when you are finishing or when you're going to school there.
Well, like I said, I went to community college for 2 years, and that would have been starting in fall of 03. So 03 and 04, well, we know what happened in Auburn football in 04. Well, I kind of agreed with my parents, okay, I'll go to community college for 2 years, but we're getting football tickets in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that worked out well for me.
Timed it well.
I had a chance to go to all those home games in 2004 and also went to the Sugar Bowl that year. But anyway, then transferred over to Auburn and had always had an interest in not really accounting, but my mom said, you need to look into accounting. So I agreed, but I knew I had a passion for sports. And so I pursued a degree in radio, television, and film while also getting a degree in accounting. And, of course, those have nothing in common. And, if I had only done the accounting, maybe I would feel differently. But I went to a meeting about sitting for the CPA at one time, and at that point, I know I don't want to do this the rest of my life. And so that's when I went in the exact opposite direction. But, doing that and then getting my master's, that kept me there long enough that I was still a student in 2010 when we won the national championship. So,
wow.
By getting 2 undergrad degrees that have nothing in common and then getting my master's, it kept me there long enough that I was able to experience that. And obviously, as an Auburn fan, that's something that I'll never forget. And not only being there, but working in the athletic department. So I was in the press box for all the home games, and as well as the SEC championship game, and then got to go to the national championship game as a fan.
That's an incredible amount of timing on your part. Just the fact that you are bookending, and I'm aware that's not more closer on the 2010 side of bookending it, but the fact that you are about to arrive there as the undefeated season in 2004 happens, and then you're the championship year. I don't know that there's a time in Auburn history that you could have chosen to better have bookends in your time at the university. And in that light, I'd like to ask you, I know were actually on campus for 2010 and got there right after the 04. What was the more exciting time to be on campus? Was it during the heyday of the 6 in a row at Alabama, or was it at the 2010 season?
I'd have to say 2010. I mean, with Cam Newton and, the Heisman run that he went on, and just all the crazy games you had that year. I mean, that team loved to fall behind, but they always found a way to come back and win at the end. And so, yeah, I would have to say 2010.
Yeah, it was a special year. Just for a little background for myself and something we can connect with again is that was my senior year, was the 2010 season. And it was incredible to witness from the student section and how wild all of that was. Each and every home game, I went to a few of the away games. And it was an extremely special season. But, I don't think people appreciate how special the 2004 team was and that undefeated streak and how good they actually were. And you probably had, a pretty good perspective of that as well, being as involved as you were in your love of sports. Do you think the 2004 team could have been better than the 2010 if they had been given the opportunity to compete for the championship, or do you still lean more towards Cam Newton?
Well, I would say 1 through 85. I would take 2004, but 2004 didn't have Cam, and they didn't have Nick Fairley.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make definitely Cam Newton was the best player in college football that year. I don't know how you could argue against that.
Mm-hmm.
And you could also make a strong argument that Nick Fairley was the best defensive player in college football that year.
Right.
And, but that 2004 team was mighty loaded. It would definitely be a great game.
Mm-hmm. I think
I would
go ahead.
I would take Cam. I think I would take Cam in that situation.
It's very interesting, the dynamic between those two amazing seasons for Auburn. And you've got, like you said, I love the way you phrase it. They're 1 through 85. I think they're better on paper, meaning the team as a whole was just stacked. And not to take anything away from the rest of the players in the 2010 team, but when you've got talent the level of Nick Fairley and Cam Newton arriving at the same time on campus, and I know Nick Fairley had been there for a season or two before that and building into the system, but when you've got them rising to their highest potential at the same time with a pretty good team around them as well, it kind of gets lost how great they were, but also the 2004 team as well. And I won't say we forget about it, but it just kind of is like there's a national championship versus an undefeated season. We're all bitter about the whole USC and Oklahoma thing, but that's just crazy to think about. And every time I hear someone compare about those two seasons, that's what kind of comes to mind here. You talk a lot about being involved in the press box while you were getting involved with media relations and the athletic department. I have never once stepped foot in that press box, sir. So for me and for everybody else who wonders what it's like up there, you need to paint the picture for us.
Well, since the press box has moved to the end zone, I have not been there. So when I was there, it was, I was pretty close to the 50, between the 40 and the 50. And, it's definitely different because I always sat in the student section growing up, in the wheelchair section 17. So, I was, it's definitely a different perspective when you're sitting in the student section as opposed to the back row of the press box. But it's definitely different. You're working. You can't be a fan. No cheering in the press box, but it's definitely still excitement. All these people that you grow up seeing on TV, you're like, now they're standing right in front of you. But you got to get over that and realize you're there to do a job just like they are.
Yeah. Did you ever have any moments where it slipped a little bit, or were you just the perfect professional the entire time?
Kick six.
I think anybody in their right mind, even if you're not physically cheering for Auburn at that moment, you're just cheering because of the magnitude of that situation. So I can only imagine what you were doing and saying in the press box during that moment. It must have been, I know you probably, in some small part of you, wish you were down in the stands with us, but it had to be pretty cool to have the bird's eye view of it.
Yeah, both of those things are definitely true. But I was just thankful to be there because obviously that's a moment that, even if you're not an Auburn or an Alabama fan, if you were just watching that game, you'll never forget it because it not only was a great play in Auburn history and Iron Bowl history, but it was a great play in college football history. And so, to have a job that allows you to witness moments like that and the prayer at Jordan Hare and just different things like that, to me, you can't beat it.
Yeah, I'm jealous of you as we continue to talk about your story here. I grew more and more jealous of people as their episodes go on because I realize how much I feel like I've missed that on because of everybody's individual Auburn story. And it's unique for everybody and it's special for everybody. But it's just cool to think about what you've gotten to see, not just on the Kick Six, but other games as well. you brought up as well that you're standing or sitting in front of some of the greats that are passing through in the press box or working in there. So who's the big name that you either got to work alongside or meet while you were in there that kind of sticks out in your mind?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that anybody really sticks out, but I mean, it's everybody that calls games on the, all the different networks that carry Auburn on the ESPN and CBS and such. But, again, you're there to work, so it's not like you just sit down and have a conversation with these people. But, you try to get over the whole, I don't know, starry eyes or whatever. You just, like I said, you're there to do a job and they're there to do a job. But,
yeah. So other than the kick six, what's the next best game that you covered while you were working in the press box?
Next best game. I mean, Jordan Hare was, the play was, fourth quarter was terrible up until that point. I think back to the Cam Newton's run against LSU in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely a moment that sticks out to me as well. I would say those are definitely some that stick out.
Yeah, I can, again, I'm jealous of the bird's eye view that you had up there in the press box and were able to witness those things. While you probably had to be a little bit muted, except in the kick six, you were probably witness in a different angle that not many of us get to. Some of the greatest moments in Auburn history, but some of the greatest moments in college football history as well. Tell me a little bit about other sports at Auburn that you're passionate for, and anything. I think there's the big three: football, basketball, baseball. But there's others besides that. So what are you most passionate about other than football?
Basketball and baseball. I mean, I'll watch pretty much anything Auburn's playing because I want Auburn to be good in everything. Because I think when they are good in everything, the different sports feed off of one another.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, again, I want Auburn to be good in everything, but I'm a huge college basketball fan. Even when Auburn wasn't good, even though college football growing up has definitely been my favorite sport, my favorite sporting event is March Madness. I love it. Like I said, even the 15 years that Auburn wasn't in it, I really think that event is undefeated. I mean, it delivers every year. So, yeah, definitely basketball and baseball.
When it's a normal year, I think it is the greatest. I think it's three and some change weeks in sports. It is an event like no other. And while you were very lucky to be at a time at Auburn where football was king, even for that 2007 year, which wasn't so great, it recovered pretty quickly after that. You were there in a time when basketball was not so great. Like you said, it was 15 years than we ever saw the tournament, and you were there amongst that. Did you ever in your wildest mind take yourself back to that time on campus that Auburn would ever get back to that point as low as it had gotten during your time there?
You allow yourself to dream of things like going to the Final Four, but I'm like, you definitely wonder if it's ever going to happen. And then Bruce Pearl happens, and as soon as he's hired, you're like, okay, I like where this is going. And I was not in Auburn during that season, unfortunately, but I was definitely following it very, very closely. And you're right. I mean, you go through 15 years of what we went through, it makes you appreciate a run like they went on a couple of years ago, where they they got hot at the right time of year. They go to Georgia. Chuma hits the shot at the end to win it, and that sparked them. They go to the SEC tournament and win 4 in a row, beat Tennessee in what was essentially a road game. And then, to beat Kansas, North Carolina, and Kentucky in back-to-back games to go to the program's first Final Four, other than winning the whole thing, I don't know how you beat that.
There are moments in sports, but obviously Auburn sports as well, where you feel like a team literally turns the corner. I think what you described there, the shot that Chuma made at Georgia, is obviously that for that team. I'm even thinking back to the 2010 football season, and I kind of consider when Ontario McCaleb came around that corner to seal the game against LSU late in the game. That was almost them turning the corner. I think there were a lot of turning the corners in that season because it was so crazy. But I think that's one as well that you can look back to, and it's extremely special. And even though you weren't there for this time, I think, like you said, it makes you appreciate this so much more this time that we're in. I mean, it would have been great if you could have been there for it, right? But
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, that was definitely a magical run. And before that Georgia game, I mean, they were 7-7 in the league, and caught fire. And that's one thing that is so great about March Madness is, you get hot at the right time of year. You just never know, what could happen and who could win it.
Outside of sports, and we all admit here that as Auburn family members, the sports is the engine that drives the car, but there are still other parts of the car that require it to move and make it just as important. What about being on campus as a student outside of sports? What do you remember most? Was it a class, a professor, just being there as a student and the things you experienced on campus? What are some things that stick out to you during that time?
Ooh, getting 2 degrees that have nothing in common, for one. You go from a media class to an accounting class. That's a shock to the system, but I don't know. I mean, I was pretty low key. I guess it doesn't really get away from sports, but I was there when the wheelchair basketball program started, and had an opportunity to play with them for a few years, and had never played wheelchair basketball in an organized capacity. So that was neat because, like I said, growing up, you just kind of accept the fact, okay, I'm never going to be playing sports at Auburn, and then you get that opportunity, and it's pretty neat. And so that was a lot of fun.
Now, we went this whole show, and you were going to tell me that it took this long, at least, to tell me that you were on the Auburn wheelchair basketball team. That is awesome, man. We have gotten a better appreciation for that because we've had 1 or 2 representatives that have, gotten more familiar with our network as time has gone on. And we've gotten some more familiarity with the program. So that is pretty awesome that you were there. You have done it all, man. You book in with 2004, 2010, and you go work in the press box, and you help start in a way the wheelchair basketball team. Now, how good were you guys at the beginning of all this?
Not good. Not good.
I love the honesty.
But I was grateful that they got it started, and I've followed them, as closely as I could, and thankful that they've continued to build what we started. And I can remember we actually were playing in a tournament in Birmingham at Lakeshore the weekend leading up to the national championship in 2010. And before I even found out about the tournament, I'd already booked tickets to the game. And so I said, hey, I'll be there. The tournament, let's see, would have been, I think we played 2 games on Friday, 3 on Saturday, and we had 1 on Sunday. Well, the latest flight we could get out of Birmingham was early Sunday morning. I said, I'll be there Friday and Saturday, but I got a flight to catch Sunday morning. So I played 5 basketball games between Friday and Saturday, got up early Sunday morning, and flew out of Birmingham to Glendale. And we were actually probably one of the last flights out because if you recall, there was a winter storm that came through at that time. And actually the guy that ended up sitting beside us, he didn't get there probably till the second quarter. And he said that they had a police escort, and they carried him off of the plane in his wheelchair and put him on the bus or whatever they rode from the airport to the stadium. And I said, yeah, we definitely we timed that one right, and because we were able to get out there. It was a bumpy ride, but we made it, and we were there. I guess the day before the game, but it was interesting hearing his story of how he made it out there.
It was a bumpy journey for not only the football team that year, but for some of the fans to get out there, it sounds like. But it was all worth it in the end of it because we came away with that crystal ball and brought it home, and it made everything so much more magical that season. Taking a step back further, and as we said, we acknowledge that it's not just all about sports, and we talked a little bit about campus life. What about you said you lived in Auburn for a while. What is it that you love about Auburn, the community, so much? I mean, I know it's obviously about the university that's over there, but there's got to be something else that you love about living there other than just the university and the sports that surround it.
I mean, it's cliche to say, but I mean, it is a family, and just the tight knit family aspect of Auburn, and you never meet a stranger. It's growing up in a small town. Going to Auburn, I feel like it's still a small community, but it's bigger than what I grew up in, and so you still get some aspects of the small community, but still there's more people, I guess is a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Well, you were very familiar with the small town aspect, but it's I'm sure you are fond of Selma and the people that you grew up with there and your family, of course. But there's just something unique and something different about the Auburn family, and especially when you put that combination of that concept and that belief that we all share together in that small, quaint little southern town on the plains, that it just kind of magnifies it. And we all maybe not be able to define it, but we know what it is and we feel it.
I don't know that you can describe it until you've experienced it. I mean, obviously that's been said over and over again, but it's been said over and over again because it's true.
It very much is so, and it's something that I think we all recognize, even if it takes us forever to define it. So, Scott, one of the things that people probably know you for is on Twitter, you're known as Scroggins Noggins. They've probably seen your little logo and everything, and know that you are a stat master. And while you said that you had two unrelated degrees and majors at Auburn, I kind of see them as related personally. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but accounting and then media relations, when you combine stats and then sports, I think that kind of works the two together, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, they do. It does. And, a lot of people in the media, they run as fast as they can away from any math. But thankfully, I'm not like that. I'm not saying I'm a math whiz by any means, but I definitely like, looking at stats and how, in a way, stats, they tell a story of how a game goes, and being able to pick out the stats that actually mean the most and are the most noteworthy. So once I started this job and dealing with the stats a lot, you definitely it's hard to watch a game now and not think about different stats, especially, even when it's not an Auburn game and not a game that I'm covering, just a game that I'm watching. I love the stats and how it relates to the game.
I love how you described it, that, it tells the story of a game and it's almost the game within the game. And I've learned to appreciate trends and things like that. And it can really tell you, what the odds are that a game is going to go a certain way. Because I think as we sit back as a fan and just think about, if we just do this, this, and this, then, Auburn or whoever can be successful. But sometimes with you can probably understand that it's much deeper than that with some of the things that you're able to pick up on with your training and your understanding of math. Does it ever kind of jade you knowing the real life statistical stuff, being able to kind of look at that and process that much quicker than everybody? Do you kind of realize, well, we're out of this? Or do you realize this, well, there's no way they're going to beat us? Any of that time ever happened?
No, not really. I mean, it's just, like I said, a matter of picking up the stats that really matter. As a team known for running the ball, or in basketball as a 3-point shooting team, you need to know what stats to look at and what stats really tell the story of the game. And it can be a lot to keep up with, but like I said, once I really got into it, it's kind of hard to just watch a game and not notice all of the things that, the graphics that you see on TV, for example. And, a lot of that comes from research that, people in the media relations offices all over the country, depending on what teams you're watching, the research that they do. And, I got to admit, it was neat the first time I said, hey, I did that research, and now it's on ESPN. That was pretty neat.
Yeah, I would imagine it's a fulfillment there that you have, that you've done all this hard work, these number crunching, And sometimes, while that may go unappreciated, I enjoy it very much when I see some little minute detail that I wouldn't have picked up on. But men and women like you that are involved in this and actually enjoy doing this type of stuff can find these little nuances that are just interesting sometimes to find out. And we benefit very much here on our podcast network when we talk about sports, obviously, and are able to kind of digest those a little bit better because of people like you. So we appreciate your efforts. And, I always like to plug it out there to people. Will we ever see a Scroggins Noggins breaking out on your own and doing something big, like a big old website or something like that? Or you just kind of enjoy doing it on Twitter?
Right now I'm going to stick to Twitter. Who knows what the future will hold, though. But, it's funny to me how, you can come up with this great note and that takes a long time to research, and then you put it out on Twitter and it doesn't seem to be real popular, and then you can come up with something that you come up with basically no research needed, and it blows up. So it's funny how that works sometimes. And
I chalk that up to the nature of Twitter more than the actual interestingness of the stat, because all the stuff that I've seen you put out there, it's always stuff that I would have missed or not appreciated as much if you had not put it out in the way that you do so. So my encouragement to our listeners, if you are not following Scroggins Noggin, you need to on Twitter because he does a great job analyzing that type of stuff. You'll get a better appreciation for the game within the game and the story within the game by following him. So I think we're at a great point, though, Scott, to kind of round out your Auburn story by putting you through the not so rapid fire questions that are going to be all Auburn related, meant to be fun here. But we'll see. Some of your answers may be a little obvious because they kind of lead you a certain way, but we'll see what your answers are. If you're ready, we'll get started.
All right, let's go for it.
All right. So we got 12 questions here. And like I said, I'm always intrigued sometimes by the new things that I learn about people in each of these questions. So question number 1, choose one, orange or blue?
Orange.
Any reason why?
I don't know. I was there one time. October was there, and they started the All Auburn, All Orange campaign. And I always thought it was neat seeing the stadium all orange on TV or in person.
I always thought that orange to me kind of it to me is a brighter color. It catches my eye more, but I feel like I lean towards more associating Auburn with that navy blue because to me it's just so pretty. But they work so well together. I have my good friend Clint Richardson to thank for my appreciation of how well orange and blue actually work together and his love of aesthetics. Question 2, choose one, Aubie or War Eagle?
War Eagle.
Oh, Scott, you are now in danger of being taken over by the minions of Aubie. I can't help you at this point, my friend. He has his little minions out there, and if he knows that he loves his War Eagles, but if he knows you chose them over him, I can't help you. So I think you're doomed to be smothered by a furry, fuzzy little tiger. What do you love so much about the Eagles?
I think it's the greatest tradition in college football, the Eagle flight. Before the game, like I said, I don't think you can beat it.
Yeah, it is one of a kind and uniquely Auburn.
And also, I mean, if you look at not just War Eagle, the animal, the mascot, but War Eagle, the slogan. I mean, that connects the entire Auburn family. I mean, you can be anywhere in the world and hear those two words, and it'll take you right back to Auburn, Alabama.
It's an excellent point. And I agree with your choice. Don't tell Aubie I said that. But I do love your reasoning behind why you love that one in that choice scenario there. Question
not to mention the fact that before I started working a lot of baseball games, I would sit on the concourse right behind Auburn's dugout, and it seemed like that's where he liked to park it. And then all the kids would come up while we're trying to watch the game and be bumping into me, and so I didn't appreciate that. But
well, it seems like you and Aubie have some history y'all need to work through, so we'll set up that counseling session.
But hey, Aubie's been a great representative of Auburn for a long, long time, and it's definitely one of the great traditions of Auburn, and that's why it makes that question so hard. I mean, you really can't go wrong with either answer, in my opinion.
Yeah, you feel like you're hurting a family member by choosing one of them, but I force it every single time on these episodes. I force the issue because I want to see what people choose. Question 3 for you. What's your favorite part of the Auburn fight song? It can be a word, a line, the whole thing, but what would be your favorite part of the fight song?
Ooh, I don't know. I just say the whole thing.
I would ask you to recite the whole thing now, but we don't. I'm not gonna put you on the spot. But
Well,
I bet you could do it.
If I'm gonna sing, we might as well end this because nobody else is gonna listen to anything else.
Scott, there are many things that people would listen less likely to listen to, and one of those is me, as opposed to you singing the fight song. So you would not be the thing that would end this, sir. So I'm sure you do it justice. Question 4 for you. Probably an obvious answer, but we'll just ask it for completion's sake. What's your favorite Auburn athletics program?
Football. But like I said, I mean, if it's on, I'll watch it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's got orange and blue, and they're chasing a ball or flipping over something or jumping horses. We love it, and we will watch it. So I feel that. Question 5: your favorite Auburn athlete?
Cam Newton.
And what would be your number one play for Cam Newton if he's your favorite athlete?
Oh, man. I mean, I guess pass to Lutz to win the Iron Bowl. I mean, just that whole comeback. I mean, that was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it was an incredible game. And for those that were there, I'm extremely jealous of you because that would have been an amazing one to be in person for, and just the whole way the game worked out.
Well, that was actually an interesting story. I had the opportunity to go with a guest of our office, and I was not in the press box. I was in the stands, but just off to the side of the press box. But because I was going not really in a working capacity, but still not strictly as a fan, I had dressed up. Well, I had dressed up, but I had not dressed warmly, and it was rather cold that day, and so there I am sitting in the stands. And even though I was in the stands, since I was, going as a member of the Auburn athletic department, I was going to act in a professional manner, so I did not cheer. And, there were a few Auburn fans around me, and I'll let them know, hey, I'm one of you, just FYI. And, I suffered through the first half, and I should have started with this, but my dad rode up there with me, and he did not have a ticket, but he texted me and said, hey, I found a ticket. And I was as far away from the Auburn section as you possibly could be and still be in the stadium. And I'm sitting there at halftime. I'm like, well, I don't ever leave games early, and even if I wanted to, he's got the keys, so I might as well just stay. I mean, I was going to stay anyway. Anybody that knows me knows I'm not going to leave. And I remember we all went into the press box, and it was a group of us from Auburn at a couple of different tables, and I'm not sure a word was spoken, but another one of our student workers and I were chatting as we were going back to our seats for the start of the second half, and we both said, if Auburn scores on this opening drive to start the second half, we're right back in this thing. And of course, that's what happened, and that'll be a game I'll never forget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that whole season's just got chock full of memories, but there are moments that you flash you and you start questioning, is this the best moment of that season? And I think that game and those moments within that are arguably up there and can win pretty much any argument if you're going to have that type of discussion. Let's move on to question 6. Your favorite Auburn coach?
I guess it has to be a tie right now between Coach Thompson and Coach Pearl. I don't know how I could break that, and can't say Coach Harsin because he just got here, but
right.
What both of those guys have done, and it's just been amazing to watch them build their programs. And I mean, Coach Thompson's maybe the nicest human being I've ever met.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love both of them as representatives of Auburn. They are one of a kind, both in unique ways. Bruce Pearl's a character, but I think that's what makes him great. And I think the way that Butch leads the baseball team is very commendable for him. I may be reading into your answer a little bit, but let me make sure I'm clarifying this, because this could be any coach ever. Would that still be your answer, kind of a tie between the two of them, if knowing that you could have any coach of all time in this question?
Well, I mean, I think if you're going to go all time, I mean, Coach Dye's got to be up there. I mean, just what he did for the program, not only winning 4 SEC championships, but getting the Iron Bowl to Auburn. I mean, that to me, was the biggest thing that happened during his tenure, in my opinion.
Yeah, we'll remember him for many, many things, and that is definitely one of them. And it's because of all those things that we hold him in such a high regard. And even now, it feels like many, many months since his passing. It's still just, when you think about how special that man was, and obviously for what he did on the field, but for what he did in defining and encouraging and emboldening the Auburn spirit within the Auburn family is just outstanding and commendable.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, his what he did for that program, obviously is still being felt today, and will be felt for generations to come. And there's no doubt about it. Auburn football is what it is today because of Pat Dye and many others. I mean, it's not just Coach Dye, but he was obviously a huge part of, really one of the best times in the program's history.
And he should be, and will rightfully remain that way probably and for eternity. Question 7, a little bit away from sports. This is your favorite Auburn non-athletics person. So let me clarify a little bit. This can be anybody who's not directly associated with athletics. So it can be a family member. It can be a celebrity. It can be a professor. It can be anything when I think of Auburn, I think of this person.
I guess it'd have to be a tie between my parents. I mean, I am who I am today in a large part because of them, including being an Auburn fan. And my mom actually grew up rooting for the other team, and she grew up going to games there, and ended up going to Auburn and falling in love with it. And I tell her all the time, I'm thankful you did.
See, I was not so fortunate. My mom grew up an Alabama fan. She still is to this day. So she has the bragging rights for 365 days, unfortunately. But I'm happy that you get to have both mom and dad there. And I think that's a fair answer, a tie. So you don't have to play favorites. I put you in a lot of awkward positions choosing Obby and War Eagle. I won't make you choose between your mom and your dad. I'm not going to do that to you, Scott.
Thank you.
All right, we are getting closer to the end here. Question 8, your favorite Auburn building on campus or in the town? But when you think of Auburn, you think of this building.
Dirt and Hair. That's an easy answer for me. Too many great memories in that place.
We'll keep moving along then. Question 9, your favorite Auburn place to eat?
Whew. It'd be somewhere on South College, Jim and Nick's. I mean, I know that's not just Auburn, but
no judgment here.
From where I lived, I could go in there and never even have to get on College Street from where I lived.
No judgment here. It doesn't have to be something that's homegrown there. There are places that are chains or smaller chains that are there that I still kind of like, it may not technically be like a Mama Goldberg's that started here or something like that, but I still think of that when I go there. And I think of Auburn when I think of this place because of the memories that are associated around it. So no judgment on that answer. Question 10, your favorite Auburn tradition. I think you've already answered that, but let me just make sure you understand the full context of the question. It can be sports or non-sports traditions, and it can even be something that nobody else has except you, like a personal tradition, but your favorite Auburn tradition.
I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I do love the Eagle Flight, but I also love riding by Toomers after a big win and seeing all the toilet paper, mostly because it means Auburn won. And I love what obviously that signifies. And I remember when I got back to Auburn after the national championship game and riding down Toomers, and it definitely looked like a blizzard had come through Auburn. I had never seen it like that, and just amazing. And two, if obviously I would not have turned down the opportunity to go to the game, but if I had not been fortunate enough to go to the game, I would have loved to have been at Toomer's Corner after that game, because working the games, that's not something that I get to participate in. A lot of people had waited a long time for that season and that night, and of course it'll be something we will remember forever.
Absolutely. Question 11, Your favorite Auburn memory. When I think of Auburn, I think of this memory.
It's the same thing we've been talking about, the 2010 season. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that if you made me pick one, it would be the Iron Bowl. But, I mean, there's just so many memories from that season.
Your final question, and I will make it a little bit harder for you. I want you to describe Auburn in one word except for family. Describe Auburn in one word except for family.
Well, that threw me a curveball.
That's what I love to do here.
Because, I mean, that's definitely the obvious answer, but tradition, maybe?
Okay, I like it. You know, some people probably think of championships across the state over there, a little Mississippi College. But tradition to me is something that's much more than wins and losses. It's something that you look back on fondly because of the memories you have around those traditions and the people that you share them with. So I think that's a very apt way of describing Auburn in one word if you were taking family away from you, which I did. So I apologize for not making it easy on you, but I like your choice of words.
Yeah, like I said, I've listened to some previous episodes, and I mean, family is the obvious answer, but it'd be interesting to see some of the other answers that you get when you take family out of it.
It is. It's always interesting to see where people's minds go. I think we've all felt from your Auburn story here how much you appreciate the sports, the fandom, the traditions, and everything in between. And we have been enjoyed here getting to know why you love stats so much, where you grew up, your background, your time at Auburn, and some of the interesting experiences that you have had as an Auburn family member. So, Scott, thank you so much for being a part of this show and for sharing your Auburn story.
Thanks for asking me to do it.
Of course. And we'll have many other opportunities for those of you listening to share your Auburn roots in the future. So be listening out for those. That's all we have for you on episode 21. But until we talk to you again, War Eagle.